Today's text is from 1 John, the 4th chapter. 1 John says, "There is no fear in love, for love, perfect love, casts out fear." A number of years ago, a lot of years ago, in the mid to late 70s, a friend of mine and I were going to a district ministers meeting in North Philadelphia. We were going into a neighborhood that 12 or 13 years before had suffered the 1964 riots. And so the neighborhood wasn't really in good shape. And we stupidly decided, even though we were told to bring a lunch for this meeting, we'll get something down there. And as we drove into the city and got closer and closer to the neighborhood that we were having the meeting in, we began to look around and think there's not really a place to buy lunch here. It was a food desert. The neighborhood had not recovered. Well, we went to the meeting and it got to be lunchtime and we thought, we'll just walk up to the avenue and see what we can find. And so we did, and we walked into this small grocery store. You'd probably call it a bodega. And when we walked in, there was the guy at the counter that was checking people out. And I don't know that there was staff there. There were maybe 6 or 8 other customers in the store. Anyway, when Paul and I walked in, a hush came over the place. It was like everybody in the place suddenly held their breath. And we didn't know if that was hostility, distrust, or what. Obviously, we were in an African-American neighborhood and an African-American store. And so we walked around and we did find a sandwich for each of us and some chips and some other stuff, some Cokes. And we got to the checkout counter and the guy at the checkout counter looked at us a little weird and we were feeling weird. And so we fumbled around and said, we're a couple of Methodist ministers going to a meeting down at Haven Church. And suddenly he smiled. And everybody else in that store smiled. And it was like they left out their collective breaths. It was really weird and unnerving. So we took our lunch and we walked back to the church. And we were talking to the host pastor, Al Johnson, later to be Bishop Alfred Johnson. And we told him what had happened and what our reception was like in that store. And he said, they probably thought you the weights and measures guys or a couple of cops or something. I said, He said, but just so you know, Alfred Johnson is African-American, by the way. That's how we feel when we go into a white store and how we get looked at. Something to think about in these days. Fear and love. And the words of 1 John, that perfect love casts out fear. And so in closing, I'd like to read this prayer. It's from a book called A Common Prayer. I think it's more like wisdom because there's no "Oh God" and "Amen." But anyway, here it is. There are only 2 feelings, love and fear. There are only 2 languages, love and fear. There are only 2 activities, love and fear. There are only 2 motives, 2 procedures, 2 frameworks, 2 results, love and fear, love and fear. Amen. Go in peace. Serve the Lord.